Articulate ahead of time what your boundaries are. Because otherwise, you tell them they have freedom, and then you're grabbing and jerking their chain. And no one wants their chain jerked when they think they're serving Jesus. Okay, and so we will articulate. I remember when we started a ministry for singles, it wasn't the sexy singles, but the hurting singles of our community. And that means the people that are like 40 to 55 and have gone through that painful, I never thought this would happen to me, divorce. Well, we're built around small groups. So the thing was, we're going to be our North Star. We're going to be a ministry of North Coast, not a parachurch. It's going to be heavily around the word, because there is going to be a dating meat market sort of thing that's unavoidable in that thing. How do we set a boundary about it? You know, the type of Bible studies and all that we are going to do, the type of socials. And then the boundaries were set. Since it's a part of North Coast Church, our small groups are going to be based on our sermons, not the teaching that goes on in that singles ministry. Because otherwise, the guy would have had a great vision to get here, and then now I'm saying, does that make sense? I'm jerking his chain? So if you want to get out of micromanage on the front end. Take some time and say, what can they do and what can't they do? Spell it out. Like I said, if I had that chart, we'd draw it. And then as long as they stay in bounds, we let them get wherever they want to, their way. And then it's up to me to say, you know, my way's not always the best way. But nothing's more frustrating than to think you just came up with a great trick play, and then you find out, oh, sorry, you can't do that one. That'll destroy young eagles as you're trying to raise them up. I always want to micromanage on the front end, because on the back end, it is always going to be a discouragement. So I've learned to bite my tongue if it's not a major issue on the back end.
I think in the process of that too, I think asking a lot of questions, open-ended questions in particular, a lot of times young or staff will come back to you and say, what should I do about this, or how should I do that? And if you don't lead with the answer, but you lead with more questions, it helps them to grow. And I think that's a great way to, ask them, well, what do you think you would do about that? Or what are some options that you've thought about? And really throw it back in their court too, because they usually have really great answers, and they're usually better than ours.
I forgot something very important that we do. We have a no surprises rule. We are not an organization in which it's easier to get forgiveness and permission. We will kill you. But you only can do that if ahead of time you have a bias to say yes. Okay, so the no surprises rule means they run their ideas, and then we work our hardest. We got to say yes, so that A, I can protect them when it falls apart. Yeah, I knew about that. Or B, I can keep them from doing something absolutely disastrous. But you can't have a no secrets rule if all the time they're just getting no, because it's got to be done your way. Then they'll find ways around you. So for us, the communication is front end, no secrets, boundaries, and then we're pretty loosey-goosey. You stay in bounds, you can run whatever pass pattern you want. Just catch the ball and get in the end zone.
The other thing I would say is, it's one thing to say that you can receive criticism, and then it's a whole nother thing to be able to look at, the man or the woman that's on your staff, receive it, not get defensive, and work through it. And one of the things that we celebrate amidst our crew is just very much a culture of critique, a culture of vulnerability, a culture that can very much, twice a week when we meet, call one another to task. I can count on one hand in the last few years times where guys have got defensive, because especially if I get defensive, then I show everyone really this isn't a culture of critique. When we're talking about my stuff, just make sure you encourage me, pat me on the back, feed my insecurities, and then I'll micromanage everyone else. I have to be the first to receive the critique, share in it, own it, apologize if necessary, and then allow out of that the opportunity for each of us to, as it were, manage one another in that case. So I think a culture critique amongst the staff is absolutely quintessential and begins with a leader for sure. Lane, were you going to add something there?
I would just say, I would reaffirm what they said. For me, micromanaging is perspective. And if you're asking me questions, I don't want you asking me. That means you're micromanaging me. And so I want to be careful that even if they feel that standard has to be set. Patrick Lencioni gave 5 levels of authority, and we utilize that. I think he's the one that gave that. Of when we give authority, is this authority to make a decision? Is it authority to spend money? I don't remember what they all are, but we we use that list, and it's been helpful to clarify that. But I also want them to know going in, how am I going to evaluate whether this is a win or not? And if we put that on paper, it helps us to know better how we're going to evaluate that. And then, quite frankly, sometimes things happen, and I don't necessarily like it, agree with it, or feel good about it, but it's a win. And so they were right. And I need to acknowledge that and champion that. And the other part of that is, in evaluating, I can say a lot more through asking questions than I can making statements. And I can build them up at the same time and give them ownership and let them own the responsibility of it without having to feel like they got micromanaged.